Hi, I'm Nicholas from Ratings.com. Today we'll be doing a review of the Samsung QN85B. We'll be evaluating it on our standardized test bench to see how it performs and if you should buy it. We bought and tested the 65-inch model, and we expect the 55 and 75-inch models to perform similarly, but the 85-inch model is different because it uses another panel type. This TV is the successor to the Samsung QN85A from last year. It's one of the 4K mini LED TVs in Samsung's 2022 lineup, sitting behind the QN90B, and it sits ahead of the regular QLED lineup. The Samsung QN85B looks a bit different than the QN85A from last year. The TV itself looks the same, with a stylish and simplistic design, but the stand has a hexagonal shape instead. The stand raises the screen about 2.5 inches off the table, so most soundbars fit in front without blocking the screen, but some larger soundbars still block it. The stand is center mounted, and it doesn't prevent the TV from wobbling, but it's not that bad. Most of the inputs are side facing, but because they're set into the TV, they're hard to reach when wall mounted. All four of its HDMI ports support HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, which is a nice addition compared to the QN85A, which only had HDMI 2.1 on one port. The TV's tuner supports ATSC 1.0, so unlike the QN90B, which has ATSC 3.0, you can't watch over-the-air 4K channels. It also has an eARC port on HDMI 3 that allows you to pass high-quality audio to a compatible receiver. It supports Dolby Atmos signals, but not DTS:X or DTS signals. Since most Blu-rays use these audio formats, you'll need to connect your Blu-ray player directly to a receiver to get the best sound. The back of the TV fits the 200 by 200 VESA mount standard, so you can wall mount it for a cleaner look. There are also grooves along the back and a track in the stand to help route your cables to the inputs. The build quality of the TV is fantastic, which is what you expect from a premium model like this one. The bezels are metal and the back is plastic and feels solid, but there still is some flex. Like we said before, there's some wobble on the stand, which is the biggest downside of its build quality. Now onto our test results, and we'll start with the contrast. A high contrast ratio results in deep, dark blacks, which is good if you want to watch movies in a dark room like a home theater environment. This TV has an ADS panel, which is a type of IPS panel, and it has a low native contrast ratio. Luckily, the mini LED local dimming feature greatly improves the contrast with real content, so blacks look deep and inky. The contrast with local dimming is still low with our checkerboard pattern, but that's because of the way the pattern activates the dimming zones, and it's not representative of real content. Local dimming is a feature to further improve dark scenes for a better movie watching experience. The QN85B uses mini LED local dimming, and it performs better than the QN85A. The 55, 65, and 75-inch models have 720 dimming zones, which means that it likely performs best with the 55-inch model because the dimming zones are smaller. There's a bit of blooming, especially with our test pattern, but it's not as bad with real content. The algorithm tries to even out the backlighting zones when there's a small, bright object, which makes it look like a brightness gradient. The blooming is most noticeable with subtitles and text on dark backgrounds, but otherwise it's not as bad as the QN85A. The processing adapts quickly to fast-moving objects too. Sadly, there's some black crush that causes smaller highlights, like in a star field, to appear dimmer. Also, the local dimming looks worse in game mode, which is typical of Samsung's, as there's more blooming and the processing is a bit slower to catch up with fast-moving objects. On the other hand, if you want to use the TV in a bright room, then a high peak brightness is important to overcome glare. The SDR peak brightness is incredible thanks to the mini LED backlighting. It easily gets bright enough to fight glare in well-lit rooms. Sadly, large areas of bright colors are dim, which you'll notice if you're using it as a PC monitor and have a full screen web page open. The HDR peak brightness is also fantastic, so small highlights in HDR really pop. The brightness behaves the same in HDR as SDR because large areas are still dimmer. It also gets as bright in game mode, and unlike the QN85A, small highlights aren't dimmed by the frame dimming. Also important for a bright room is good reflection handling. This TV actually has a different screen finish than the QN85A, with much worse reflection handling. Reflections from strong light sources like bright windows can get distracting. Still, it gets really bright, so you shouldn't have many issues with it in a well-lit room, but maybe just don't put it outside. If you have a wide seating arrangement or like to watch TV with family and friends, then a good viewing angle helps ensure no one's left with washed out colors or crushed details. Thanks to its ADS panel, it has a good viewing angle, so it's a good choice for wide seating arrangements. The screen gets a bit darker at really wide angles, but other than that, you won't have problems with it if you want to watch shows or the big game with a lot of people. An overall uniform screen brightness and color is important when watching sports or playing video games to avoid the appearance of clouding known as dirty screen effect. The QN85B has good overall gray uniformity. The edges are a bit darker and there's a bit of dirty screen effect in the center, so you might notice this while using it as a PC monitor, but it's not too bad. As for the black uniformity, the local dimming causes some blooming around the test cross. However, it's better with real content because it turns on more zones than needed at times, resulting in less blooming. A lot of people care that a TV has good colors. In this case, the QN85B has a very good color gamut. It has excellent coverage of the DCI P3 color space used in most HDR content, but it's limited in Rec 2020. It has a decent color volume too, as it displays dark and bright colors well, but it's limited by its incomplete color gamut. Still, colors look vivid in HDR and really pop. Also, it has great out-of-the-box accuracy, so you likely won't need to get it calibrated to enjoy the best picture possible. Some TVs struggle to display smooth gradients, so when watching a movie with a sunset, some banding can be visible. As for the QN85B, it has great gradient handling, but there's still banding with darker shades of gray and green. There's a noise reduction setting that reduces banding, but it also causes a loss of fine details with high quality content. Now, let's look at the gaming performance. When playing video games, a fast response time is important for the clearest image without distracting blur. The response time is impressive and motion looks smooth for the most part. However, there's a lot of overshoot with dark transitions, which causes inverse ghosting in dark scenes. It's common for Samsung TVs to use pulse width modulation to dim the backlight, and this TV is no exception. Pulse width modulation is when the backlight flickers, which can be noticeable if it's a slow flicker. The flicker on this TV changes depending on the picture mode and backlight level. It flickers at 120 Hz in most picture modes. This low flicker can cause image duplications and headaches if you're sensitive to it. However, some settings and picture modes make it go up to 960 Hz, so it's not as distracting at that point. A low input lag is also important for a responsive feel when playing video games, and thankfully this TV is fantastic in this regard. You won't feel any delay while gaming. You can even enable the motion interpolation feature in game mode, and the input lag is still low enough for casual gamers. Speaking of gaming, this TV supports all of the common signals up to 120 Hz in 4K, and you won't have issues playing games from the Xbox Series X and PS5. However, keep in mind that it doesn't support Dolby Vision, so you can't play in that format on the Xbox. It does support variable refresh rates though, which is good for a tear-free gaming experience on both consoles. The sound of this TV is decent, which is about typical of many TVs. It gets loud and there isn't much distortion or artifacts, so dialogue sounds clear. However, it doesn't produce much bass, and like with any TV, you should get a soundbar or proper speakers for the best sound possible. Like other Samsung TVs, this one uses the Tizen platform. It's a bit different from past versions as the interface fills up the entire screen instead of just having a banner at the bottom. It's user-friendly and you'll find it easy to navigate through the menu. It also has a few extra features this year, like the support for Google Duo, allowing you to connect a webcam and make video calls. You can also use different voice assistants with the mic on the remote, as you can choose between Google Assistant, Bixby, or Alexa. This makes it easy to connect your TV to your home ecosystem. Speaking of the remote, it doesn't require disposable batteries, and you could either recharge it with the solar panel on the back or via USB-C. So this brings us to the main question. Should you buy this TV? Honestly, this is a great TV as it gets bright and looks good in dark rooms, especially for a TV with an IPS type panel, but there are better overall TVs. Even if you need the wide viewing angle, the Samsung QN90B has an ultra viewing angle layer, it has better reflection handling, and there's less blooming around bright objects, so it's better to get that TV for improved all-around performance. However, if you're deciding between the QN85A and the QN85B, the QN85B is a better choice for dark rooms because the local dimming is better. But if you want something for bright rooms, it's best to stick with the QN85A because it has better reflection handling.